Everyone, it's a great pleasure welcoming all of you to this very, very interesting and important roundtable on the future of SDGs, where we have experience of working on development pathways at multiple levels, and each one of us brings in that level of wisdom and experience. Today is a very unique day that we could convene this roundtable with everyone's support, and I would like to thank our Director General for his full support and guidance in conceptualizing and designing this roundtable. And we definitely have very high level participation. I'm very grateful to each one of you for joining this. So with this brief, we know time is very limited. So with this, I would request our chair, Ambassador S.T. Devery, who is the chairman of our Research Advisory Council, to lead the proceedings today.
Thank you very much, Sabyasachi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are really meeting at a very opportune time when SDGs are now more than half through their timetable. 2015 to 2030, now it's 11 years have passed, and I would say SDGs it was a subject of great optimism on the global development landscape. It was a major UN achievement in 2015, post Rio 2012 when it was first mooted. And just as the MDGs were negotiated and they were operated through the first 15 years. Now we have the SDGs, which are, as I said, through half of their time. To discuss this future of SDGs, we are really privileged to have two leading UN experts, the UN resident coordinator, Mr. Stephen Prisner, and UN resident representative, Madame Angela Lucigi, with us, along with RIS faculty and experts, and all the knowledgeable hands from around the country. Well, today, when we meet, the situation in the world is such that I think there is a clear weakening of multilateralism. As we speak, this atmosphere of uncertainty prevails, and the UN itself is under tremendous pressure, I think under considerable tension with respect to its effectiveness, if I may say so. Now this has caused concern regarding the progress in SDGs themselves. We have the agenda of SDGs up to 2030, and it is slowed down due to several shocks. It will not be exaggeration to say that the 5 Ps, namely people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships, which the SDGs were supposed to usher in, are also under considerable threat. 14 of the 17 SDGs are stalled, especially SDG 2 and SDG 4. And only 17% of SDGs are said to be on track. India's own rank, I think, in SDGs said to be at 99 out of 167. So we have actually a big challenge as to how to meet these various constraints which have been imposed on the SDGs. What will be the what are the bottlenecks with respect to the local action which requires to be thought of today. there is clearly a big financial gap. I think that is one of the major constraints in the progress of SDGs. Also, there is a big debt, which I think the debt burden of 1.4 trillion with respect to debt servicing, which is another constraint. In spite of that, I think there have been localization efforts and national policies, and we can hear about that in the course of the discussion in the afternoon. Those localization efforts, including LIFE, the guiding framework for local action, some of that can be, I think, one of the pathways towards progress in SDGs. So we have a big agenda today to discuss, namely the bottlenecks, the future pathways, innovations and partnerships that can help in the progress of SDGs. And I'm therefore delighted that we have this array of experts who will give their thoughts on this very important topic, and we can look to SDGs with a greater hope, because certainly for mankind, I think the SDGs offer tremendous promise, and we do hope that it will not be failed. I would request therefore Dr. Sabyasachi Saha to set the context of this discussion, and then we'll have remarks by Dr. Mohanty, and we'll request our honored guests from the United Nations. So Dr. Saha, you please tell us about the context of this whole discussion this afternoon.
Thank you so much, sir. Once again, I thank our Director General, Professor Sachin Kumar Sharma, with whom I have been discussing about the roadmap on the SDGs and what lies ahead. Basically, there is a lot of stakeholder consultations currently happening on the development journey that we have experienced so far and what lies ahead, particularly beyond 2030 as well, given the challenges that we see currently. Chair has beautifully captured the context, as I just mentioned. Several issues he has highlighted that we are going to take up today during the course of the discussion. Definitely, India has played a major role. India definitely has very good examples, best practices on localization that we would like to hear from everyone here. And the policy push that was there from the top in building the operational framework of SDG localization that happens at multiple levels, not only in policy framing, on monitoring, but also building partnerships. With that, we have experience of the SDG India Index, we have the Aspirational Districts Program, we have the Multidimensional Poverty Index that we know that how multidimensional poverty has come down remarkably in India, and also the VNR process, what we have learned in course, because India took VNRs very seriously during this period. As was highlighted initially by the leadership, that SDGs are not alien to the country's development context. It mirrors the development agenda. The complete reflection and convergence of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, with leaving no one behind, which was an inspirational way forward when the localization process was beginning to happen. At RIS, we have been following this process quite closely, right on the means of implementation frameworks, on financing, on South-South cooperation, partnership with states, and also with a little bit of granular focus on the northeastern states. We have also done large-scale action-oriented projects on science, technology, innovation for sustainable development goals, and also integrating ideas of life, which became more and more evident and prominent during India's G20 presidency. Definitely going forward, the future pathways have to be much more evidence-based and reasonable, and we do need to take into account whatever India could kind of achieve during the G20 presidency in terms of the new SDG action plan, the G20 high-level principles on lifestyles for sustainable development, MDB reforms and other areas, and particularly the push for global public goods, though multilateralism is at a inflection point at this stage, but definitely the partnerships and solutions that would come through global public goods is something that would be crucial. Definitely multilateralism remains critical for norm setting, but we need to be very much more flexible in partnership building. So with some of these ideas, we thought that building on the past work and again with the support of colleagues here around the table, we could at least chart initial roadmap as we go forward and eventually consolidate ideas further. So with this, I hand it back to Chair again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saha. We would now like to hear from Professor Mohanty. As you know, Professor Mohanty has been one of the brain trust of RIS for so many decades now, and he has been studying international trade and the context of the SDGs. So over to you, Professor Mohanty.
Thank you, Chair, my co-panelist. I think there is a lot of concern expressed globally in different publications about the not fulfillment of 2030 agenda is a major concern. At the beginning of the millennium, the development divide was very much clear, and perhaps that was one of the guiding principle for initiating Millennium Development Goals. When it got started in the initial phase, particularly between 2003 to 2007, global buoyancy really helped in terms of fastening the process of implementation of MDGs. That led to very accelerated progress, reduction of regional disparity, reduction of poverty, hunger, gender balance also came into existence, substantial flow of aid to the rest of the world. Developed countries were also quite generous in terms of giving debt relief to many debt-ridden countries. HIPC countries are substantially supported. Rise in capital flows, growth in trade and investment. That was the golden time for the global economy to see things were booming, and it was highly supported by MDGs. 2008, situation changed. Recession followed by slowing down of the world economy, and then the achievements made under MDGs were very poor, and then the beginning of the new era of SDGs 2015. But in 2015 onwards, the world economy never saw the same kind of buoyancy that it witnessed in the early 2000s. So slowing down of the global economy culminated into the slow flow of resources for the fulfillment of SDG agenda. And the tremendous pressure on goal 17 in terms of generating enough of resources to put forth the different SDG goals. But very interesting thing one can see that there is a growing convergence between North and South in terms of their economic accomplishment. Once, if you look at 1960 or 1970, trade and investment, they always put kind of support to growth to rise. And that was more intensive in 2000 and onwards. So there is a greater convergence between North and South, and with convergence within the South. That means if we look at developing countries into emerging without China, other developing countries, transitional economies, LDCs, you can see the less developed countries are growing faster than those who are already developed or developing much better than others. But they performed a very high level of growth when there is a little bit of a buoyancy. But when there is recessionary forces operating in the global economy, things are different and they need hand-holding, and hence the importance of SDG 17 to really generate enough of resources to implement SDGs. Already there are studies, OECD and others, saying that the resource gap is quite substantial. The need for resources maybe around $6.4 trillion by 2030 to really push such kind of goals. I would like to focus that the role of science and technology in terms of fulfilling SDG goals. I must compliment UN agencies for their several initiatives to promote science and technology, like International Decade of Science for Sustainable Development by UNESCO. Similarly, on UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development by IOC and UNESCO. UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, UNEP and FAO. So all those programs really help different countries in different sectors in terms of taking the help of science and technology to fulfill their SDG goals. India also played a very important role in this regard, and its performance has been quite commendable in terms of implementing several policies and welfare schemes in the country. My colleague Dr. Sabasaj has said about the programs that India implemented, amounting to reduction of poverty and also in different areas. But what we see globally, that the implementation of SDG below average, it is less than 20%. So India also played an important role in terms of initiating 2023 plan of action in G20, and also really supported and undertook intensive research in the area of lifestyle for environment, where it covered many issues such as sustainable consumption or production, basic needs issues, issues related to traditional knowledge, many other. Prime Minister also in his speech, the third voice of the Global South Summit, articulated the idea of development compact. And with this, there are 5 different areas were highlighted, including trade, capacity building program, technology sharing, grants, and support for different projects. This is quite substantial, which can really help SDGs to be promoted in different countries. RIS also, our organization, also from the very beginning worked on these issues. Even the very formation of this institution is because of South-South cooperation. The motto of the organization was to support the plight of developing countries. In 1990, we started the program on basic needs and very clearly articulated that we should really work beyond GDP. Even my colleague, Dr. Sabyasachi Shah, worked on well-being index in 2010s. We also worked under the SDG localization and its implementation issues like research and capacity building in different areas. Life is another major mainstream work of RIS. So, SDG program is a major work program of RIS so far. But coming back to the present situation, which is very critical, in up to 2023, 2022, there was a little bit of a buoyancy in the world market. But since 2023, there is slowdown in the world economy. In 23, it went down to 2.8%. Now, what is projected by UNCTAD and others, that world economy would be around 2.7%. If you want to really raise the level of the global rate, at least if you take the global average of 2010 to 2019, which is around 3.2%, and you have to raise it from 2.7% to 2.3% and above, I think we have to work a lot. During global buoyancy, many countries, particularly from the developing world, they work well, but the progress has been quite slow during recession. So in this period, it is important that hand-holding is very much required. In 2024, what do we see? That trade in goods trend is flat. Trade in services growing but very slow. FDI, it is rising, but it is just half of what it was in 2015. Development assistance going down. So naturally, at this stage, serious pressure on SDG 17. And I think that at this point of time, the relevance of Prime Minister's idea of development compact is very important. I think we should follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohanty. I think you have given us a very good survey of the situation of SDGs since they were started. Talked about the situation of economic buoyancy in the world market and how it has impacted. I think the significant point which you made was that there is now a growing convergence between the north and south, which is a positive development, as also convergence within south itself. I think the initiatives taken by United Nations, particularly with respect to science and technology, have also been greatly helpful. Now, the ideas of development contact as well as South-South cooperation, those are initiatives which have been pursued by RIS. RIS regards SDG as a major program, and I think we will be following that very closely in the coming years. We would like to hear from our UN colleagues now, panelists here. What is the prognosis which UN has with respect to SDGs in the coming years? Because the time is now short. As you just now mentioned, there is a financial gap of $6.5 trillion by 2030. Now, how is that going to be now filled? Who is going to come up with that kind of funding? And whether there will be greater coordination between the north and the south, that remains to be seen. And I think in this, UN will have to play a very important role. So with that, may I now request Mr. Stephen Prisner, the resident coordinator of the UN, to kindly enlightening us on the UN role in the SDGs. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Sudhir, distinguished panelists, including especially my dear colleague Angela Lucigi. The fact that we are both here already kind of demonstrates how important and how timely today's discussion is. Dear distinguished partners and colleagues, before looking into the future, whenever I speak about the SDGs, especially at a time when the United Nations is so much under pressure as currently, I need to recall what a fantastic framework the SDGs were in 2015 and what a seminal achievement in terms of multilateralism it was, to move from the MDGs, which was a very much smaller and less ambitious set of targets and goals, towards this comprehensive framework that not only balances the three dimensions of social, economic and environmental, social economic development and environmental sustainability, but also recognizes governance, good governance, inclusive governance as a goal by itself, which recognizes the importance of partnership. In SDG 17, you mentioned it, dear Professor Moharty, the fact that it's a universal framework, while the MDGs were focused only on developing countries. Now everybody follows the SDGs. And last but not least, the issue of measurement, which was of course much more sophisticated in the SDGs than in the MDGs. And having recently been posted to India, it makes me very proud that India has probably the most sophisticated national measurements of SDGs, has taken it on, the 169 targets, 253 indicators, has translated this into 284 national targets, and not only at union level, but also at state level and sub-state level. This is just an example of how the SDGs were managing to inspire the whole world, and were then taken forward everywhere, because anywhere where I was posted, the same has happened. Now, it's true that the SDGs are in crisis, and Ambassador Sudhir, you mentioned that there are multiple reasons for that. Of course, COVID was one of the reasons. The current kind of divided world is another one. Wars is a third one. And of course, there is also a financing gap and other issues, also lack of planning. There are many reasons for that. But it is true that 4 years before the end of the 4 years and 9 months before the end of the SDG framework, we are only at a state of having 35% of the targets of the SDGs on track, and some very concerning fallback, such as the 800 million people that still live below the poverty line and go home hungry. Drinking water, sanitation, billions live without them. Of course, we don't even have to talk about climate and the CO2 levels that are the highest in the last 2 million years, and the issue of debt service costs for low and middle income countries has already been mentioned, 1.4 trillion US dollars. So this is a reminder that there are two stages. First of all, an immediate focus on re-energizing the SDGs, and secondly, then also the discussion of the future of SDGs. Within that, I mentioned it already, India, I think, is a lighthouse for the global South, a beacon of how SDGs were taken on and how they have led, I believe, to the significant reduction in multidimensional poverty, transformational digital public infrastructure, and remarkable improvement in social protection coverage, among many other achievements. We have, I think, Professor Moharty talked already about some of the constraints, including fiscal constraints, including technology divides, including increasing climate impacts, and a huge financial gap, 4 trillion US dollars, that are needed to close the gap until 2030. So to regain momentum, I would like to offer three priorities. First, to mobilize and transform financing, including advancing private finance, leveraging multilateral development banks, and strengthening domestic SDG budgeting. I had in one of my former assignments, and a very interesting example was Malaysia, where we had SDG budgeting. We tagged each budgetary expenditure to different SDGs. Second, accelerate integrated actions and system thinking. I think, again, India can export this thinking to many places in the south and possibly also in the north. I'm very impressed how budgets for, let's say, economic development sectors also include sustainability concerns. I think this is really innovative, and I think many, not only southern but also northern countries could learn from that. And thirdly, strengthen partnerships and multilateralism. I think it's extremely important to in this time really have a counter movement to strengthen multilateralism, to assert multilateralism, which will be the only solution for global challenges. Anybody else who kind of challenged this, in my view, has nothing equivalent to offer. Now, looking beyond 2030, the discussion has started, of course, in headquarters, but the launch pad of the 2030, post-2030 discussions will be this year's SDGs summit, where this will be the formal milestone to define the successor of the 2030 agenda, and will try to carry forward the momentum that the recently adopted Pact for the Future has created. A few issues which are at the moment in the center of discussion in the UN. Number one, the metrics beyond GDP. ECOSOC is in discussions with UNGA and with member states to develop a multidimensional progress indicator beyond GDP, prioritizing planetary health, human well-being, and digital equity as the new benchmarks for success. Number two, I mentioned it already, reforming the global financial architecture, which is a central theme in current UN bodies as what is called the Great Finance Divide. Discussions are focused on systemic reforms to the international financial architecture to ensure that the post-2030 era is supported by sustainable long-term funding rather than cycles of debt. One of the shortcomings, personally, that I see in the SDG kind of framework is SDG the one on decent work. I think needs to be combined with the role of the private sector, a more kind of robust role of the private sector. I think it's still too few aspects, in the framework. So I'm sure this will be one of the focus areas. Then number four, governing the digital frontier. We agreed on the Global Digital Compact, and currently efforts are going on to strengthen the AI governance. And I want to again commend India for a splendid holding of the recent AI Impact Summit, where I think the messaging between India and the United Nations was very close. It has to be AI for all, well-being for all, and not only for a few corporations that lead, the pack. Then fifth issue is the intergenerational equity. This will, I think, stay very much crucial. Obviously, the whole sustainability discussion, potentially it will add some additional aspects of sustainability which we didn't know yet in 2015, which was focused on circularity, climate, and biodiversity. Number six, a science-first implementation. And there the UN Decade of Science for Sustainable Development, which started in 2024 and will bring us to 2033, is being used to pilot advanced data systems and evidence-based monitoring that will form the technical backbone of the post-2030 monitoring framework. So with the emergence of big data, with the emergence of the data revolution, we can expect that measurements and scientifically based measurements will be further strengthened in the post-2030 agenda. So these were only a few messages coming from UN headquarters at this point in time. Hopefully they help a little bit to take the discussion forward. I certainly look forward to hearing back from this forum, because for the UN system in India, we'll also be very happy to collaborate with think tanks to take the discussion further in the upshot of this year's SDG Summit 2027, that we can already feed the global headquarters with Indian thinking. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prisner. I think in your keynote address, you have not only covered the ground, but given us very concrete recommendations from the UN headquarters. It was heartening to hear that you regard India as a lighthouse and of a beacon in progress on SDGs in the global south, and then come up with clear suggestions like mobilization of financing, secondly, accelerating systems thinking, third, strengthening partnership, and then beyond 2030, there's already thinking going on in the UN how to address constrain the issues. So this has been, I think, a very useful kind of advice from your side, and I'm sure, I think in the discussion which will follow, we will have substantive discussions on the very useful suggestions given by the resident coordinator of the UN this afternoon. We have now special remarks from Madame Angela Lucigi, resident representative of the UNDP. Well, UNDP has been the key agency in the Indian, in the global context, and also in India. And we look forward to hearing from you, your story about SDGs.
Thank you so much. Of course, after Stefan has spoken, because he speaks for all the UN agencies in India, so mine is just to complement it from the human development side, because the D in UN development program is really about human development, placing people at the center of development. So let me begin with a story rather than a statistic. A few months ago, I visited a village in Odisha. So it was a few hours from Bhubaneswar by road and then down a bumpy track. And I went to reach this village, and this village would not usually appear on the map, and it definitely doesn't feature in policy conversations. But at that village, which is Baghamari village, I met women, I met young people, I met elder people who are playing a very important role in restoring the mangrove ecosystem. And it has led to improved soils, less use of agricultural inputs, and the mangrove forest also is a buffer against cyclone damage. And what really impressed me from my interaction with the community is that there were very clear messages that were coming out through the art from the children, from the visual representations that were made by young climate champions. And they were translating real messages about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing plastic pollution into everyday language that everybody understood and could act on. I also met women farmers who showed me their new climate resilient rice varieties that were much more productive and giving them a real livelihood. And this community, for us, represents what in development terms we always call the last mile. And here's what struck me, especially from the young climate champions. They were not only talking about the present, they were also talking about the future. So the Sustainable Development Goals, as we've heard, are often discussed in terms of targets, indicators, and global progress. But in reality, SDG achievement will be determined whether lives are changed, whether we reach those who are hardest to reach, and whether we are seeing things that data is unable to capture. And for us, that's what leaving no one behind really means. And that is where the future of the SDGs will be ultimately decided. We've heard about the global context, and as we approach 2030, we must admit we're in troubled times. And the discussion on the future of the Sustainable Development Goals is somber because, as we've heard, so many targets are off track and some are even reversing. But we always knew that the SDGs were ambitious, aspirational, and it was never going to be easy. And today, the urgency of actually achieving those goals has been accentuated in ways that we could not have anticipated 15 years ago. We are navigating a world shaped by overlapping crises, conflicts, wars, climate shocks, economic uncertainty, widening inequalities, and technological disruptions. And yet, in this important complexity, we realize a truth, that the SDGs are not losing their relevance, they're becoming indispensable. And I'd like to share with you today 5 keys to unlock the future of the SDGs. One we've heard is localization. In India, the future of the SDGs is increasingly being shaped not in Delhi, but in states, districts, and communities. Over the past decade, India has made significant strides in embedding the SDGs in the governance architecture. The country has developed one of the most robust SDG monitoring frameworks globally, and including the SDG India Index that was mentioned, and it fosters a spirit of cooperative and also competitive federalism. But what is truly shaping the future is localization, and localization is how we operationalize leaving no one behind. We've had India's experience through the Aspirational Districts program, state-led SDG coordination mechanisms, and they're demonstrating how data-driven governance, convergence, and real-time monitoring can accelerate outcomes, especially in underserved regions. So by focusing on districts and communities that have historically lagged behind, India is shaping the development lens. It's moving away from averages to equity, from progress to inclusion, because national progress will mean little if it doesn't reach the last mile. Now, the second area that has been touched on also is financing the future with equity at the center. Ambition without financing remains an aspiration. So the scale of investments that's required to achieve the SDG far exceeds public resources, and that's where the SDG future will be decided through innovative financing mechanisms, as was mentioned. India is already demonstrating leadership when it comes to blended finance models, ESG-aligned investments, and also CSR frameworks and green bonds. But as we mobilize capital, we must ask a critical question. Are we financing what is easiest or what is most needed? Leaving no one behind requires that financing flows to underserved people, regions, geographies, vulnerable populations, and high-risk sectors that are often overlooked by traditional investment models. So the future of SDG financing must therefore not be just about scale, but also about equity, about targeting, and about impact. The third area is a central role of communities and the civil society. No conversation on the future of SDGs is complete without recognizing the role of civil society. And India's civil society ecosystem is vast, it's diverse, and it's deeply embedded in communities. It plays a critical role in reaching those who are often invisible in policy and data, including tribal populations, women in informal work, persons with disabilities, and marginalized communities. So as we look ahead, civil society must be seen not just as implementers, but as strategic partners who help to co-design solutions, to strengthen accountability, and also to ensure that development remains people-centered. And this is particularly critical in areas such as tribal development, where progress must be measured not just in economic terms, but also in dignity, in identity, and in rights. The fourth area is around data, digital, and inclusion, because a defining feature of the future will be the role of data and digital transformation. India's digital public infrastructure, from Aadhaar to UPI, has demonstrated how technology can be used to expand access and inclusion at scale. But the real opportunity lies ahead. Leave no one behind means we must invest in disaggregated data, data that reveals who is being left behind and why. Digital systems must not just be efficient, they must be inclusive by design, ensuring that technology reduces rather than reinforces existing inequalities. And then fifth, looking beyond 2030. That is the topic of the discussion, right? As we look towards 2030, we must ask ourselves a forward-looking question. What comes next? The SDGs have already provided a universal and integrated framework, but the future will depend even more on adaptive, resilient, and deeply anchored equity considerations in the framework. The next generation of global frameworks will evolve in several important ways, just to complement what Stefan has already said. First, from goals to systems. We need to focus on transforming systems, food, energy, urban, and social protection, while ensuring that these systems work for those at the margins. Second, from incremental change to transformational leadership. This will require political and institutional courage to break the silos, to reform governance systems, and to take decisions that prioritize long-term outcomes over short-term gains. And third, from targets to resilience and risk. We need to embed resilience, particularly for vulnerable populations, at the heart of development planning. And fourth, climate as a foundational principle, ensuring that climate action is not separate, but central, and that consideration is just and inclusive. And finally, stronger accountability with real-time data, citizen engagement, and transparent systems that ensure that no group remains invisible. So let me close by saying that in many ways, the global framework beyond 2030 will not replace the SDGs. It will evolve with them. It will carry forward the enduring idea that development is meaningful only when it reaches everyone. But the future will demand more. So beyond SDGs, we should shift to focus from goals to guarantees, from ambition to accountability, and from inclusion as an aspiration to inclusion as a measurable metric. Because ultimately, the defining question of the SDG era will not be what comes after 2030. It will be this: did we reach those who needed it most? And in answering that question, we believe that countries like India will shape the future of global development with scale, diversity, and capacity for innovation. India is not just implementing the SDGs. It is actually redefining what inclusive development at scale can look like in the decades ahead. Thank you so much.
Madam, that was a brilliant exposition of SDGs, what they are and what they should be. Well, you touched upon the very basic thing, last mile. I think, and when you said that SDGs really mean whether the life has changed, whether life is bearable for common people. I think that is indeed the key to this. Also mentioning about the importance of data, digital transformation. These are really key things. Sorry. I'm very sorry, yeah. You also spoke about what is beyond 2030. I think that is the topic which is really before us today. Mentioning that goals should be replaced with systems. And that, I think, will be the key. Whether there will be political decisions available for that, whether there will be courage to break silos, and how climate should be treated with this respect. So I think the warning which you have given, whether we really can replace SDGs, and did we reach those who needed them most? I think that will be finally determine the future of SDGs. And it was again heartening to hear that India's progress in this whole world, in this whole SDG world is quite laudable. India is redefining SDGs. I think this is something which we would now ponder over in the discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will have a quick round of introduction of all our panelists, and then we'll have a group photo before we go for the next session. So I would like to start with our online speakers. So if they're on the screen, you may please introduce yourself. Yeah. Dr. Nicholas?
Yes, Dr. Saviasachi, good morning. I'm Nicholas. I'm a fellow at RES, and I'm also working on the topic of the future of the SDGs after 2030 a lot. So, real pleasure to be here, and real pleasure to hear thought-provoking remarks from the UN here at this session. Thank you very much.
Dr. Varshney?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve Varshney, working at RIS, and earlier I used to work for Department of Science and Technology, from where I superannuated as head of the International Division. Thank you.
Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rajan Ratna. I'm a former deputy head of UNESCAP Sub-Region Office of South and Southwest Asia. Thank you.
Dr. Ganga Tilakratna from Sri Lanka. Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ganga Tilakaratna. I work as a research fellow and head of poverty and social welfare policy research at the Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka. Thank you.
So now we come back to the table with Professor Sanjeev Kumar. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sanjeev Kumar. I'm the Dean of the School of Liberal Art at Bennett University. And I work in the area of global economics, leadership issues, especially the role of humility in transformational leadership, and learnability in the higher education system. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anita Prakash. I have set up my own consultancy now, which is called Research Lab Asia. This consultancy provides research for economic growth and inclusive trade in emerging economies and global south. But prior to this, I was with the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia in Jakarta. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Professor Sandhya Iyer from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. I'm working as a development economist and focus on poverty, inequality, and human development issues. Been working extensively on localization of SDGs and also looking at the political economy of international development in contemporary times. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Radhika and I'm head of the UN Resident Coordinator's Office, work with the UN team under the Resident Coordinator's leadership. Also very privileged to have had a partnership with RIS ever since the adoption of the SDGs. So very nice to see how we are now going beyond the SDGs. Thank you.
Myself, Dr. Sabyasachi Saha from RIS.
Good afternoon. I'm Professor Pami Dua. I'm a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister and also Distinguished Fellow at RIS. I'm also Senior Professor and former Director of the Delhi School of Economics. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Dr. P.K. Anand. In fact, I was handling SDGs at Planning Commission and Niti Aayog at the commencement of sort of SDGs. Thereafter, I worked for quite a number of years at RIS, and I'm privileged to be invited today. Thank you.
My name is Pratap Singh Birtal. I was former director of ICR, National Institute of Agricultural Economics and Policy Research here in New Delhi. I have worked on, particularly I'm an agricultural economist, so related to issues to climate change, diversification, value chains, and all those kind of things. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jyoti Chandiramani. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at Symbiosis International University. I'm also the Director of the Symbiosis School of Economics. And we work very, very strongly in our curriculum on SDGs, which I will speak when I come. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Manish Pradarshi. I am a monitoring and evaluation specialist and director at Niti Aayog. So I'm here, Niti, to give a perspective regarding what my organization do is that we try to evaluate the central sector and centrally sponsored schemes and try to give the insight to the government of India regarding what is going on. And it is the kind of that organization which give insight about SDGs and all. So I will be talking more on my topic on SDGs. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kaustu Bandyopadhyay and I work with Participatory Research in Asia, PRIA. The organization is based in New Delhi and we work on civil society strengthening, citizen participation in governance.
Thank you so much. So as we come to the close of the first segment of our discussion today, we have small tokens of appreciation for our guests from the UN. So we'll just do that and then move on to the, and we'll have a group photo and then we move to the next component. So thank you, everyone. So we will now immediately move to the next thematic session on lessons from localization efforts and national policies. We have the honor of having Dr. P.K. Anand to lead us in this session. And we have two online speakers, Dr. Sanjeev Varshni and Dr. Ganga Tilakratna. So with this, I hand it over to you, sir.
Ambassador Devre, Amit Duaji, Dr. Sabyasachi, Atul Kaushik ji. I think it's a very rich panel, and we are supposed to have a look at two aspects: localization efforts and national policies. I recall many years back I had gone to Tripura, and in another visit Dr. Saha was also with me. So this word localization, it creates awareness at local levels, but there are many things which we don't want to create so many people handling different targets, etc. at each level. That's not the idea, to waste resources. So I'll just give one practice which I liked in Tripura. We went to a pineapple farm, and the farmers told us that the demand spurts do not match the maturity periods of pineapple. So if you give this problem to anyone in Delhi, except Mr. Brittal probably, he will tell you that how much of, say, cold storage you require, or logistics, cold chain. But what the farmers were doing, they were using some growth regulators, ethyl, urea and sodium carbonate. And they were regulating the growth in such a manner that the crop was harvested to match the demand spurts during festival seasons. Similarly, I recall once our Honorable PM had come to Niti Aayog when I was working there. And one line which he spoke over there was, अगर हमारी नीयत ठीक होगी तो हमारी नीतियाँ ठीक होंगी, और हमारी नीतियाँ ठीक होंगी तो हमारी नियति ठीक होगी. So if we have good intentions, our policies will be good, and so also our fate. And the kind of programs, I always admire one program, Ujjwala scheme. And the statesmanship of the PM, rather than going and telling, I am going to give you this much of subsidy, or he went and asked people, give it up. You give it up, you give up your connection on which you are getting subsidy. And I promise to give it to a female in a rural area who belongs to a poor family. And the initial target was 10 million. And now we have crossed 104 million. Under this scheme, there are more connections. And this one SDG, when we talk of SDG interconnected, is one of the best examples in the sense that it checks against tuberculosis, the drudgery of collecting fuel wood. It spares time for a female to go and work, supplement her income, devote some time for the education of the children, to drop at Anganwadi, etc. So this is what we expect in localization, and these are the kind of policies which we expect are given a push. And I'm very happy that today we have a panelist from Sri Lanka also. So given the time available, I'll be asking each panelist two questions, and one and then reply, and then another question. Then I move to the next panelist. So my first question is to Mr. Brittal. He's an agriculture expert, and agriculture and food systems are very critical, and it was proved beyond doubt during COVID times also. So how has India tried to achieve its targets under SDG 2, the agriculture part, not nutrition part? And what are the implementation challenges which we are facing? Please.
In fact, what I would say that agriculture is key to achieving the SDGs. So 8 of the total 17 SDGs, they are influenced by agriculture in one or the another way, and 9 are indirectly related to that. Now, how has agriculture dispersed? If you look at our progress, not only on the SDG, but you go back previously, it is basically making the food available. Transformation of the food system, when we are talking about, it is making the food available, that is through the technologies, then affordable. That is, of course, again, the price and public distribution system, they all come in the way. And then it comes the nutritious. If you see that chain, we begin with the green revolution to ensure the staple food security. Then we gradually move to the white revolution, milk. Then move to the fisheries, poultry, and then the horticultural sector. So here the lesson for us was that for FCT, food system transformation, is we have to move from, increasing availability to affordability to the nutrition. And the second component it comes when they are talking about poverty and hunger and all those. It is our PDS system. We operate the largest public distribution system in the country, in the world. And this is the most, you can say, the second important pillar for this. And through National Food Security Act, we have tried to, in a sense, provide a legal protection to the food to the country. Now, if you remember that in COVID times, it was only the agricultural sector that experienced the maximum growth and provided, cushion to the economic shocks that is due to the COVID. And so that time, we not only provided a sufficient food to our own population, but to other countries also. That time we learned that Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, what we provide. So more than 80 crore people, we have provided free food to the 80 people. And in addition to that, of course, there are, always there are some kind of shocks, climatic shocks or geopolitical shocks. So we maintain a strategic reserves or buffer stock, what we call, to overcome this kind of, shocks to the food security.
Now, coming to how to give traction through the agriculture innovation systems. So where we are and what are the strategies, and all at the same time to have climate smart agriculture?
Yeah. So particularly let me begin with the agriculture innovation system. Of course, our research system is quite strong. Now I think today we are the 3rd largest spender on agriculture research after China and the US. So this is one, and on diversified food. It is not only the crops and all those kind of things. So our research priorities over a time, they have changed from increasing productivity to increasing resilience to increasing the nutritional quality of the food, that is the biofortification. So these are basically comprising our main focus of the agriculture research over a period of time. And how they are being translated, of course, we have from agriculture research system, then we have the KVKs, Krishi Vigyan Kendras, that refine the technology, and the State Department of Agriculture for the transfer of technologies. And recently, in fact, if you see that that government, that in this budget, that Bharat Vistar, it will revolutionize the entire agriculture system, because it links research through agri-stack, all kind of information, markets, credit, and all those kind of things, and then the farm advisories. On climate resilience, of course, in 2008, we launched this national mission on sustainable mission on agriculture. And through that, of course, that a separate, in 2011, a responsibility was given to the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, a big project on national innovation, climate resilience agriculture. So there it, moved from not only from experimentation of the different kinds of technologies, practices and all that, and then the implementation in the field. And the field, it was basically a community kind of approach. It is not only that I provided something to one person, but it was the community, village kind of selection. And in this context, you rightly said, it is basically the localization of that. And I was doing a research paper on drought and doing some kind of multi-level modeling. And what we observed, of course, the first layer is the state, that is the policy. Second layer is your district implementing agency. Then third layer is the village, and the fourth layer is the farmers. So here then what we observed is that there are policies, but we should emphasize on what? The transfer of the policies to the local communities and the farmers. So this kind of, vertical convergence, that's will happen through Bharat Vistar.
Thank you very much. I come to Madam Jyoti Chandiramani ji. You have done a lot of work on SDGs, localization, convergence, etc. Can you please share key lessons to strengthen pathways for sustainable development?
So my observations are the glass is half full and half empty. It's not all there. You have to, while SDGs are, well, when we did this project, we took Pune city and the marginalized groups. See, how do you look at SDGs? You look at it either from the macro perspective, like how Delhi puts it out, the central government puts it out on the dashboard and says, this is achieved, this is where you are, a front runner, this is where you're aspiring. Or you go down to seeing it at the household level. So we were doing a capacity building exercise for students at the Symbiosis, because one of the things for the future of SDGs is capacity building and knowledge, because when you talk to ward level officers, they understand what are the schemes the government is doing, but not necessarily they understand what is the SDG. So that is one reality, that the glass is half empty. While they understand the schemes, but they don't know that it's really linked with an SDG. But at the top, we are all speaking about the same thing. So what we realized was that what was the central government's Niti Aayog questions could not be adopted at the city level, because there is a challenge in that. So the policy has to be adaptive because it is localized. So obviously that's the first point. The second is it has to be aligned and adapted in a manner where you can capture what is at the grassroots level. What are the challenges? And SDGs are very dynamic. What is good? What was good on the ranking? Let's say when we were doing the Pune ranking, water was right at number 1, in terms of the citizen satisfaction with the water quality and the fact that whatever were the targets that we had, kind of indicators that we had measured. But a few months down the line, there was a GBS syndrome, the GBS contaminated water, and obviously that put an emergency situation. But what was nice to know was there was an emergency kind of a situation, and people were willing to go back because they know that this is very important. What was one of our findings is that there is no demand for governance. There's a supply that we talk about governance, but the demand for governance doesn't really come in. So that was a little disturbing, because if people don't demand for those things, then you feel that the livability aspect gets a little compromised to a certain extent. So while toilets are there at home, but public toilets need to be cleaned, is not even on the priority of a marginalized household. So these were just some of the factors that I had to say, that the policy is there, the alignment, it has to be adapted, it has to be converged. Now, when it comes to convergence, you've seen it with respect to aspirational districts. It has got converged. You've had aspirational districts identified in 2018, and there have been a number of studies which have showed that they have improved. Now you look at the convergence of the schemes with respect to Kerala. Kudambashri was really first for poverty alleviation. Today it is for skill development. Now a latest report that had come out by Mahendra Dev's paper in the EPW says that, with the household consumption expenditure survey, which talks about how poverty has come down in large number of states, you can see that the focus in Kerala has moved from poverty to skilling, and they are having tie-ups with international governments, in terms of where they are having Generation Next startups being talked about in Kerala. So I think that's every state will converge and move, to that kind of a level, because each one's performances are going to be different. State performance are going to be different. District performances are going to be different. So my next question here was that when there are 100 smart cities, then why, and they have command and control centers, then why is there no dashboard with ward-wise analysis which tells you that this is where things are wrong, this parameter, this target needs to be highlighted. So this is something that I felt is definitely the need of the hour. Maybe it's state of work in progress, but what I've realized is that data, even if it is with the ward officers or with the municipal authorities, it's never really put out because it is sensitive. There's a political economy of ward-wise kind of conflict that may come out. So when we are looking at it, what is the green line, or what is, I would say, the great outcome is that education system, at the higher education system, all the rankings talk about sustainability rankings. So they talk about sustainability being, SDGs being there in your curriculum, being there in your program outcome, being there in, so therefore what's good is that even though you will find that the global environment is full of tension right now, but if the education system is embedded with this, then there's some hope for continuity in the future in that sense. And not only that, there are rankings which recognize universities for this. And so capacity building at the educational level of students in this would be a very big step to take it forward, because they are big buyers of the development agenda.
When you approach the households, there are vulnerable households. How did you take them on board and for inclusion?
So actually what we had about 260 students, we had about 9 faculty members, and we had training program for them for almost 2 weeks. And then the faculty members went with the students at the ground level to understand what exactly it is without, the way the questions had to be asked. They were framed in a manner that would be accepted by, even the ethical committee, and therefore some questions were kept aside. And when we did the study, it was 23-24. So on gender empowerment, there was no question. But now with 20 states having done the Mukhyamantri, Ladki Behan scheme, for example, which is in Maharashtra, women empowerment schemes, I think that would have given a big trigger plus. So again, whatever frameworks are done in 23-24 will have to be revised by the time you go to 25-26, because development agenda within the country itself is evolving, keeping the broader SDG framework in mind.
Okay, thank you. I come to Dr. Manish from Niti Aayog. Since you are handling M&E, my question is, what are the objectives and strategies which you are evolving at Niti Aayog, especially for capturing best practices and utilizing these across the board and helping in M&E of where we are on SDGs?
Thank you, sir. DPIO is a kind of it's a think tank which talks about how the evaluation and the monitoring will happen in country. And we try to cover centrally sponsored and central sector schemes. These schemes are, all the schemes which are being planned by the Government of India are planned in a best suitable manner. But something is happening that they are not able to provide the 100% results at the ground level. Why this is about, so we try to understand that what are the loopholes, what are the problem areas, what are the gray areas. I can give you a perspective from the evaluation which we have done for Jal Jeevan Mission and the Swachh Bharat Mission. The major issue that was happening at the ground level was that community participation and the behavioral change, that is not happening. Why that is not happening? Because the people people want to participate, but there were several hindrances of participation. For example, that government is thinking in terms of providing potable water, and but there are issues that water is coming from the far away areas, and that is not happening. But the thing is that people are very much aware that we need good water, good sanitation, and that will improve the health scenarios in the rural India. That is the lighthouse that I can see, that from where the lights are emanating, that people wanted a healthy well-being. And in terms of the best practices are concerned, like people are working very hard in terms of getting the things done. In terms of kind of like a localization, I can say that that people who are working in terms of the localization of the policies and the program, and they try to embed this localization in terms of the creation of the best practices. Like I can say that that what is happening in terms of Jharkhand and what is happening in terms of Odisha and Punjab. That is the good practices that is happening in terms of water and sanitation. So.
On SDG interconnects at local level, how are you proceeding further to harness those interconnects across the SDGs, especially at local level?
Sir, like Niti Aayog has come up with a SDG index and the aspirational districts program. So we try to get into touch with all the 17 SDGs at the state and the UUT level. And in aspirational districts and program, we try to cover around 112 districts where we try to understand health, nutrition, education, agriculture, and the financial inclusion. This financial inclusion is very, very much important, and the impact of the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana that is happening in the states of India is humongous. But the point is like the kind of the money that has to flow from one place to another, it is not flowing. And because there are some issues with the movement of financial inclusion that is happening at the village level. The Niti Aayog come up with a multidimensional poverty, and what we have said is that multidimensional poverty, we try to reduce the multidimensional poverty. And in terms of poverty and the livelihoods, the new policy which is coming up with the government of India, which is a recreation form of MG Narega, VB, Ramji, is going to change the kind of the scenario that is happening in India. And what we can say that from Niti Aayog's perspective, we are thinking in terms of last mile delivery services to the people, and we should not leave no one behind at the margins of underdevelopment. So we have to take everyone, and we have to think ways and means how we are going to think in terms of equitable, sustainable development that will happen in the rural India.
Thank you. I come to Dr. Sanjeev. With your vast experience, my question is related to technological as well as digital heft of India. What are the lessons learned and future scenarios for STI for SDGs?
Thank you, sir. When we are talking about science and technology is one such field which is dynamically changing the scenario. So I was listening to the remarks of the UN representative, Madam Lusigi, that even beyond 2030, it remains a goal. So science and technology, while in India we are addressing on digital governance, we are talking about clean energy, health and well-being, climate actions, even talking about frugal engineering and innovations, integrating our Indian knowledge system, taking whole of society. But what I feel that going beyond, we require systems thinking and synergy modeling. So rather than treating 17 goals as isolated silos, we require approaches to use complex system models to identify synergies, where progress in one area, for example, clean energy, accelerate another area like health or climate action, while minimizing negative impact on trade-offs. Similarly, we need to do a lot on data revolution and artificial intelligence integrations. So data revolution emphasizes closing gaps in geographical and real-time monitoring. Tools like AI and high-resolution climate modeling could be leveraged to predict outcomes and optimize resource allocations. more important is that we require a science and policy interface. So initiative like UN group of friends on science for action, we need to create groups to bridge the gap between academic research, scientific research, and government policy making to ensure that decisions are evidence-based. We need to go for transdisciplinary and big science models. Future strategy would require, our growth has been like some of us are physicists, chemists, biologists, medical, but those days have gone. Now we need to talk more about issues which require interdisciplinary approaches. So our future strategy advocate that big science mindset should be breaking down academic silos to collaborate across borders and include local and indigenous knowledge to validate scientific data. And we also need to look for various policy framework which are available with us, including global treaties. And then we need to, we are thankful to United Nations that they have declared the decade of 2024 to 2023 as Sustainability Science Decade. And we need to mobilize global resource forces toward long-term human and planet well-being. Thank you, sir.
Now, you have spoken on cross-border. So, there are capabilities which developed countries have and which are not possessed by developing countries and all the more by the least developed countries. So how do you feel the STI for SDGs can give a push? Because I totally agree with you when you talk in terms that science STI is an ongoing and it will go beyond 2030 also. When we see augmented solo model, besides capital and labor, K and L, that capital A is the first bit in augmented solo model, which is technology only. So how do we think of reducing disparities so that with the changing times, artificial intelligence, developing and least developed countries can also catch up?
So this is a perfect case for a greater South-South cooperation. And we need to see India is in a good position to look both North-South cooperation as well as South-South cooperation. Recently, someone mentioned about COVID, and we can recall that most of the country in global South could not afford the vaccines produced by three big giant pharma producers because they were quite expensive. And then it was country like India who helped them in giving it. Now, what we are trying from India, we are working with country in Asia and Africa in particularly, improving their scientific infrastructures. So we are twinning our institutions with the African institutions. We are also encouraging Indian institutions to have a physical presence in Africa and Asia. We are helping in creating African Center of Excellences, even within ASEAN region also we are trying that thing. So idea is that we go for capacity building, we educate them about the new emerging sciences and their application to the problem being faced by the society.
Thank you very much. I move on to Dr. Ganga Tilakaratna from Sri Lanka. She is also online. Can someone please connect? Can you hear me, Dr. Ganga?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. See, Sri Lanka had done a lot even prior to SDGs and even prior to MDG era. On Human Development Index, your progress was remarkable, which was emulated by our Kerala state also. Now, on SDG localization, what are the unique features of SDG localization in Sri Lanka?
Thank you, sir, for the question. So, as you very correctly said, Sri Lanka has achieved very high level of human development, long time ago, due to heavy investments by the Sri Lankan government, especially in 1960s, 70s. But there are a number of gaps. Now, when you look at the health and education sectors, especially certain indicators have shown high performance, like even the mortality rates, infant and child mortality rates have the targets have been achieved. Even the SDG targets have been achieved long time ago. Those targets. So those were actually because of the heavy investments in the health and education, and both health and education are universal and it's free through the public schools and the public the healthcare systems. So that is the reason actually for this achievement. But there are pockets where still there are disparities at the rural and urban areas, and there are certain pockets that needed some targeted measures. So one sector is the estate sector. So there are special programs and the estate sector, the plantation sector, special scholarship programs to get the female students into schools, and special healthcare, the targeted nutrition and healthcare programs for the estate sector, the population. And also the government is giving targeted welfare assistance like midday meal programs and for small children preschool meal programs, as well as for school students uniform program, as well as even recently we started the school providing shoes for students. This is basically to encourage the school enrollment and attendance among the children.
Now, you see, some of the aspects which you discussed, even if a country or a small area attains very high levels of literacy, but there are next cohorts, and you have to organize for education and nutrition for all these cohorts. So how are you coping up with these challenges that when you reach a certain level, how to maintain that level because aspirations are all there, and what lessons other countries can learn from Sri Lanka on these areas?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part of the question?
Even if, say, 100% literacy is achieved for any age, their next age is coming after 1 year, and you have to maintain that level. How do you do it?
So one of the key challenges at the moment is, going beyond the literacy and the primary and secondary education. So to sort of maintain the quality of education at the tertiary level. So the financing is actually one of the key constraints. And also the resources. So when it comes to especially health, now the health sector experts, there is a out-migration of healthcare workers. So it has been a big challenge in recent times.
Okay, thank you. Next come to last but not the least, my dear friend Kaustu. From civil society, and you have been doing wonderful work from Priya. My first question is, how is civil society, Priya Plus, contributing to localization of SDGs in India?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anand. I think it's not only the sustainable development goals per se, but development in general. And looking at the governance that would sort of drive the delivery of development. And civil society organizations, particularly in the Indian context, have been playing a crucial role by, first of all, the point that Dr. Manish has made to enable citizen participation and bringing their voice into the development programs, in the development policy discourses, to make it more contextualized. That's the first contribution that civil society organization does. The second is that by virtue of being in the proximity of the community, and the ability to innovate what works at the local level. Bringing that expertise is very crucial contribution. If you look at the successful national programs, somehow or the other, most of these programs have been sort of experimented by one or the other civil society groups along with the community members. Of course, there has been a lot of partnership between organizations, with the local government institutions, with the state and national government, but the real innovations came from the grassroots through civil society organizations. The third area is also linking to the first one, so bringing their voices on the policy discourse, into the policy discourse. That would also require a kind of advocating for certain changes by bringing their own experiences. But if you may allow to speak a little more, building on what Professor Jyoti was talking in terms of sharing her experience from Pune, and the point that Dr. Manish has made on lack of citizen participation. I think at the core of it, a lot has been achieved. A lot has been achieved in terms of localization of SDG and the governance framework that we have been able to put in place. Commendable leadership from the Niti Aayog, and also coming up with various sort of compact index that has helped to move forward. But I think there are four areas where we need to take more action. One is a greater devolution of authorities in terms of funds, functionaries, and functions to the local governments. Because the very heart of localization would depend on the ability of the local governance institution, which means the Gram Panchayats, the three-tier Panchayati Raj system, and the urban local bodies to deliver. If you look at, over the last 2 decades, perhaps, the spending from Gram Panchayats and the ULBs have substantially improved. But their ability to make decisions at the local level is not very satisfactory because the devolution of authorities have not happened that much. My second point is the institutionalization of urban index. The Niti Aayog has come up with this urban index, but somehow it has not been institutionalized with the urban local bodies. It has been tried with 56 ULBs, and an experiment has been very successful. It gives a kind of competitive edge those who participated in the ranking process. But remember that we have 4,000 plus urban local bodies, and in order to sort of scale it up, a lot of local leadership is required. My third point, by working with both the panchayats and the urban local bodies, one of the things that we have missed out is the urban-rural linkages. And although the Indian constitutions foresaw the significance of urban-rural convergence through the formation of district planning committee, somehow the district planning committee has not functioned as they should have. And therefore we are depriving, whether it is aspirational district program or in many other districts, we are depriving those districts from a political leadership in envisioning that how localization of SDG would happen. And therefore it's of utmost sort of importance, to look at the functioning of the district planning committee. And my last point is in relation to, and I think the panelist in the first session has also they have also pointed this out. While we have done quite a substantive progress in terms of access to education, access to healthcare, water, but the climate action at the local level, and look at the number of climate action plan that have been prepared by the cities, not more than 30. So we have to pay a lot more attention to the environmental aspects of SDGs and linking this with the climate goals. I think these 4 local level action would accelerate the localization of SDGs in a much better way, in partnership with, corporate social responsibilities, the philanthropic community, and local civil society organizations. Let me take a pause there, sir.
Can you please add on it civil society's role for facilitating inclusion and accountability?
Yeah, of course. One of the roles of civil society is to build capacities at the community level, and through building community level institutions, but also with the existing institutions available. So, for example, Gram Sabha is a kind of constitutionally mandated platform for the community. But when you see a kind of universal platform for participation, certain groups might not be able to participate in the same way as compared to other groups. And therefore, the role of civil society organization is to build community-based organizations which can open up spaces in those platforms. Unfortunately, in urban locations, we don't have a kind of similar constitutionally mandated space like Gram Sabha. But many civil society organizations have been facilitating community-based organizations to include their participation, whether it is accessing public services, or engaging with the local governance institutions in different ways, in a way sort of telling the institutions that what is required in terms of services.
Thank you very much, and I thank all the panelists for the insightful discussions on very quite diverse areas of localization and national policies. And lastly, all the more for adhering to time limits. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Is there any immediate response from the floor on this panel? Just very brief, very brief.
That cost is 12,000 rupees. You are sitting in ISC or planning commission, you are giving 12,000 rupees for making a toilet that is not usable without water, or you are expecting people do toilet or go to bathroom in that, okay? Or you are making toilet in a village, in a land or field, that will be wasted in 1 year, 2 years. Just you are making the numbers, 11 crore, 12 crore.
Okay?
Yeah,
got your point. Yeah. We can move to the,
we can not said that people are not using or people are not very happy with the Swachh Bharat program. If you have got this perception, that I'm very sorry about it. But what I said is that Swachh Bharat Abhiyan has done good. Is that government has incentivizing people to go for the water sanitation thing. This is not the best thing that government can do to provide a best kind of a sanitation facility to the people. But this is the minimal government can do to provide a facility. It is not that we are in what is there in the Delhi, or if you look at this India Habitat, what kind of sanitation it is there, and what is not, that is not comparable to the villages. That is what you are talking about. 12,000 is less, but as per the constraint of the resources is concerned, this is the best government can do, because they have to provide all over India, not to the one state or one district or one block or one village. So you have to look into the kind of the spectrum of the government of India has, and the kind of the comprehensive resource planning they have to do to get these things done.
Yeah, please be brief. Yeah.
Yeah, I am Javed Alam Khan, and I work with Institute of Policy Studies and Advocacy, and I have been, linked with SDGs since formulation. So, and I do work, on localization of SDG. So I have few points to share that we have identified, goals and targets and linked with the centrally sponsored and central sector schemes. And also we made the national framework. But the biggest problem is that, these centrally sponsored schemes and central sector schemes are not very much, coming under the local governments. And also the national indicator frameworks we made, but we are not able to generate the data. So these are the major, macro challenges. But if we think about the, localization of SDG, so I am agree with the Dr. Costo that, we have made some, 9 themes linking with 29 subjects, but devolution is not there. So without that, I think it is not possible, because local government have the very limited resources from State Finance Commission and Central Finance Commission, and though they are not very much predictable, so that's why they are not able to make the plan. And I would also say that, taking the example from UP, which is the biggest state, we have not done adequate training for the officials and local representative at the, district level. Though I can say that, yeah, something we have done at the state level, but still, in next 4 or 5 years, it is very difficult that we can reach to the, block panchayat, zilla panchayat, and gram panchayat. So I think government should, take the critical inputs also, that whatever challenges we have, because we are thinking that we should think beyond 2030. So even, we will consider it. So in next 4 or 5 years, we will take to reach the gram panchayat level. Thank you.
I would like to make a small comment. See, there are certain schemes where data is generated on real-time basis. If you go to an Anganwadi today, the mandate is that the underweight, to find out underweight children or severe acute malnutrition SM cases, the weight, height and age. The moment these are recorded by the Anganwadi worker, these are immediately conveyed, and so you have disaggregated data, boys and girls and like that. So more and more, if we move towards real time, the way data is generated, it can be captured, and this data brings to us that these are the high levels of stunting and high level of underweight. So this can be one way. And there are other techniques also which have come of late. We are using big analytics and satellites also for collection of data. There are schemes itself, like Swamitwa scheme in rural areas, where only modern technologies are used to ascertain private land holding of a person. I mean, the area where people are living in a village, not where they're doing agriculture. Thank you.
So this is a question to Dr. Bandyopadhyay. So the story of not delegating sufficient power at the local level, is it just a story of power that the state government does not want to relinquish power at the local level, or is it a story of poverty of imagination? Because once you take a complex adaptive system approach, then everything is endogenous. So the fact that power is not getting transferred from a state to local level is an endogenous phenomenon. So how do you come in terms with that?
I don't have to come in terms with it. Like the elected representatives need to come in terms with that. I think there are a couple of reasons. One is, unlike in many other areas, the demand for devolution need to come from the elected representatives, because it's ultimately a local democratic institution, and the sort of the patshala of democracy starts at the panchayat level and at the ward level in municipalities. So one is opening up space for that, and also supporting the elected representatives to sort of voice out, make that demand for greater devolution. But the devolution at the district level is not happening for a variety of reasons. I mean, if you look at the comparability of member of parliament and the DPC chairperson. They are almost like, equal. And therefore, there are political reasons, why the higher tier of government might not be, or the political players might not be wanting to devolve the power. But the third area is a kind of, misnomer, like they don't have capacity and therefore there is no point giving them further responsibilities. But our argument is that if you don't give responsibility, they will never be able to deliver. So what is, it's not a chicken egg, sort of what comes first, capacity and then responsibility, or you start taking responsibility and demand for more capacities.
So thank you for this very, very insightful and quick round of discussion and helping us keep the time. We are a bit delayed, but we'll break for a brief coffee. You can bring your coffee and tea inside so that we can start our next session in 5 to 10 minutes.
making praxis. And in a vast country like ours, to engage with a federal structure which is so complex, I think we have done a commendable job. And this is a big thing which we can say is to be offered to the developing world. How do we align ourselves with diversity? How do we align ourselves with inequalities? However, what is also problematic when it comes to developing countries such as India and emerging economies like India is that inequality has become pervasive. Our inequality has become multidimensional in nature, and we need to understand how do we address them in a differential manner. In some of our studies which we have just finished, which also includes our localization of SDG work in Maharashtra, which covered around 1,600 villages across backward regions, and also in our current work in tribal areas of India, we find that income levels have augmented and there has been a lot of improvement in the standard of living of households. However, when it comes to risks due to climate vagaries or even those related to uncertainties and risks, they continue. So can we be in a context where only 4% of the population is covered with any kind of insurance, and that's your SDG 1.4, right? So we need to understand the probability of risks and uncertainty which are now embedded in our society. And therefore, coming back to your question, ma'am, about what do we really need to do with regard to future for SDGs, I think what developing countries like India need to emphasize in global platforms is that SDGs cannot end by 2030. We need to talk about expansion of SDG beyond in a mission mode for a longer period, because the demographic dividend is going to be in Asia and Africa till 2050, and the 21st century progress of the global systems will depend on the developing world. So we cannot think about a closure of SDG by 2030. In fact, we need to move beyond it. What do we need to do? Do we need to replicate it? If I look at the debates which are going on in the global North think tanks, they are talking about transforming the principles of SDGs and reducing the number of parameters. But in doing so, we may also take away the resources, the commitments, and the partnerships that have been forged over a period of time across various platforms. But conversely, when I look at the debates that are going on in the Southern Voices or in the Global South, there is a clear-cut mandate that we want to lead the debate of SDGs from here on. And therefore, I would emphasize on the importance of strengthening South-South cooperation dialogue forums to get a much more plural understanding of what do we mean by sustainable development goals. Is it just environment? Is it just looking at select parameters, or are we also trying to talk about a more robust future? Even as we talk today, I was looking at some of the data that has been released for 2024-25. Owing to conflict and wars, close to 94 million children have been deprived from basic food and basic entitlements and humanitarian aid. But when I look at the GSDR data sets in terms of what are the allocations of ODA going to these regions, we find it's a very paltry contribution going to the conflict-ridden regions and those impacted due to climate change. So, ma'am, coming back to your point, I think the Global South needs to determine the pathways of SDGs' future, and countries such as India and emerging economies need to really take the statement further. In that sense, the lifestyle for environment framework, which was put forth by India, needs to get embedded within the SDG narrative if we need to take it further. These are the immediate pointers which come to my mind. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Sandhya, for your insightful views. And may I say that this is a surprise exam, so the panelists didn't have the questions. So, all right, so we move to our next panelist, Anita Prakash, who is founder, Research Lab Asia, and also former director, Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. Anita, the question for you is, in the face of weakened multilateralism, what is the role of regional cooperation in tackling the emerging sustainable development priorities in both the near future and beyond 2030?
Thank you. Thank you, Pamiji. Yes, indeed. But like, as they say in the good old Roman times, all roads lead to Rome. So regardless of the question, we always come prepared with some data, at least, that if not fully, but in some measure answers your question and also fulfills the mandate of the second part of today's roundtable, that is the future of SDGs. Pamiji, as many of you here know, I'm essentially a trade and investment person, but SDGs are intrinsic part of trade for development. So my thoughts really were yesterday when preparing for the roundtable, or day before yesterday, was exactly what do I bring to the table that sort of brings the partnership issues to the fore, and in which not essentially what is called the multilateralism, but regional cooperation as we see it. And in this, developing Asia gets covered, and therefore a huge part of Global South also gets covered under this. And what I'm trying to say here is that when the SDGs were launched in 2015, both Asia and the Pacific and Europe were part of it. Now, the two were not exactly comparable, as you would know. And I'm trying to bring here the progress made. This is a UNESCAP report, which I'm reproducing here. And it has been very well recorded that the post-COVID has not been very fair to the SDG goals for reasons both known, and also the direction in which multilateralism moved post-COVID. And that has had a telling effect on the progress of SDGs in the Asia and Pacific. I have the figures for Europe also after this, but only if time permits. And as you can see, I've taken some liberties because I have to convert a PDF document into Excel file. So this is not an exact copy of, for example, insufficient indicators are shown in shaded lines here, because that is an Excel function. So anyone who's trying to compare this with the UNESCAP report might find these minute differences, but the numbers have been captured correctly. But the most worrisome part is to see here is goal number 16 and 17. As you can see, we have regressed in several of the indicators. I will not go into the details, but pertinent to the question you asked, Pamiji, is goal number 16 and 17. These two are the vehicles on which SDGs had to progress, and the global cooperation, and I include regional cooperation also here from my side, were to be launched, to be sort of executed from goal number 16 and 17. And please note that these are the two areas in which both Asia and Pacific and Europe have regressed severely. Therefore, the whole multilateral cooperation, the global cooperation platform for SDGs has been weakened. So I am not being very pessimistic here. It has been weakened, but those are the places. And as we see around us, the whole Gulf 3.0, the whole concept of cooperation has been redefined in a very, very negative manner. So the theme of this session, Future of SDGs, is the prognosis, if I may say so, does not look very healthy. However, as a researchers, as group of thinkers who advise policy makers, Pamiji, you are in a very, very in the spotlight here when I say this, that these two goals are something on which all policymakers, whether locally or globally, have to focus upon. Other indicators go back to the previous session, not in entirety, but for this session, goal number 16 and 17 become very important, and equally for the question that you asked. But having shown this figure, let me just move to This is Europe, and Europe is a year earlier than what I showed for Asia Pacific, but the trend is more or less similar. But I will not spend time on Europe here and move to the next figure, and this is the quantitative aspect of the SDGs that is also worrying. As I said, I'm a trade and investment person, so I have culled this figure from the UNCTAD World Investment Report 2025, and as you can see here, on the left-hand side, we have the project values of the infrastructure of the investments that have come into the industries, selected industries, infrastructure, GVC, semiconductors. This is the kind of 2023-2024 year-over-year figures, and you can make up your minds as to where the global focus, the global attention is. On the right-hand side, what we have is the investments in the SDG sectors in developing economies. And this is even more worrying because the left-hand side is a global figure. On the right-hand side is only for the developing economies, and you can see that there is a marked regression in the investments promised for the sectors under SDG, except health and education. But that is a very small solace for earlier we had heard on the agri-food systems, and my attention is particularly drawn towards that. Now, water, sanitation, hygiene, there are several agencies working on this, but agri-food systems, which is, and the current crisis as we see globally, this has come to the focus, and investments therein are in negative, as is infrastructure and renewable energy. So I would stop the quantitative explanation here, and one final qualitative explanation, or I should say a policy picture of the question that you asked, Pamiji, is the last one. This is a figure that I had drawn for the Brussels report in 2018, when we were still very gung-ho about global cooperation. But I have added another layer at the bottom here, that is Asia and the Pacific cooperation, that unless we create synergy among the several developmental programs that we, and most of them were launched in 2015, please note, the Sendai framework, the Paris Agreement, and the SDG 2015 is common to all these three programs. And the amount of goodwill that we have in developing Asia, the amount of goodwill that we have right up till Oceania, I do not see any reason why we cannot have a regional cooperation framework in our region right up till the Indo-Pacific edge for creating the synergies between the several developmental programs that we have from the UN. But naturally, SDG 2030 is at the top. I stop here. Pamiji, I'm not sure how much of your question has been covered in this, but my sense is that bringing in a regional approach now is really the... how do I exit? I just... Okay, all right, yeah.
No, thank you for an excellent presentation. Yeah. So we move on to our next panelist, who is connected online, Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna, who is ex-Deputy Head and Senior Economic Affairs Officer, United Nations SCAP SSWA. So the question for you, Dr. Rajan, is, given that the implementation of SDGs has suffered from financing gaps at multiple levels, how do you see the emerging economies and LDCs coping with this challenge? And what are the possible strategies beyond 2030? Dr. Rajan?
Thank you, Madam. Good afternoon, everybody. And let me first of all thank RIS for giving me this opportunity. I won't take much time in explaining. But let's, and I will pick up from where Anita ji made that presentation of SCAP. If you would have seen for Asia Pacific and more so for South and Southwest Asia, where I worked the last month, the countries have been regressing, have been not attaining any of the 17 goals. So on all the 17 goals, we were lagging behind. And actually on goal 13, we are regressing. That means we have been going into a negative direction. And that was mainly because of the climate action. And also that was because of the fact that the share of renewable in South Asia and South and Southwest Asia among the entire energy mix has been declining. So, and this has led to a regression. Why I am talking about this energy and the climate is because these two are very, very important elements of SDGs, and they require big financing. They don't require small financing, they require big financing. And we should be mindful of the fact that Bhutan and Nepal are major producers of hydroelectricity. India, we have International Solar Alliance, and all these form within the renewable. Still, the share of renewable over the years have been declining in the total energy mix. Now, with this background, when we want to look into the developing countries and the LDCs, and again, I will pick up the context of South Asia. They have 4 LDCs: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal. Bhutan has already graduated. Nepal and Bangladesh are going to graduate this year, November and December. So all those benefits and the preferences that they were getting as LDC will be eroded soon. And therefore, if you look at attaining SDGs and getting the support, whether it is a funding support, whether it is a technical cooperation support, they will be treated at par with any other developing countries. So where does this bring all of us? And the previous speakers of the theme which talked about the only solution is on South-South cooperation. Why? Because we need to also listen from what has been happening globally. We have seen US backing out from climate commitments. We are nowhere on climate finance. The funds which were supposed to have been created are much shorter or much lesser than what were promised. Financing for the countries is, or financing for development, we have been talking about a lot. The Bretton Woods have been talking, G20 has been talking, but there is no funding, no financing actually. G20 has also talked about it. The public debt or debt GDP ratio for many countries have been increasing. And the challenge is that these countries, which are developing countries or LDC, they do not have sufficient funding. And then now, if we will see over last few years, the conflict in Asia, whether it is Ukraine and Russia, and now US, Israel and Iran, has put a lot of pressure on oil. The food prices have gone up. Many countries have been facing inflationary challenges. GDP growth, because of the external dependence of these countries, is going to be slow. Even for India, I was just reading it today that the projected GDP growth may decline to 6.4%. We still have to see how much it is, but if India's GDP growth is something between 6 to 7%, it is going to impact the LDCs because Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Afghanistan, they are much dependent on their trade, which constitute a larger part of their GDP. Funding, greenfield investments have not been coming. Even Anita ji was talking about in one slide how on SDG funding has been declining or performing. So there we are at a big challenge, and I see that when we are talking about a future of SDG, looking at all these 17 goals and looking at them as per goals 1, 2, 3 to 17 perhaps may not be a right approach, because there are interconnectivity. If the economic conditions would increase the social aspects or targets relating to SDGs may also perform or will have a positive correlation. Green economic growth may also positively impact environment, but technology to go green also involves a cost. So as you asked Chair about the funding and financing, that becomes very, very important parameter or is an issue which many of the countries are facing the challenges. ESCAP has been promoting many of the policy prescriptions. One is for having sustainable bonds or green bonds, bringing in investment, tightening the tax evasion, digitalization in taxes and other things. India has really transformed in the digital. So those things, if could be promoted through South-South cooperation to other countries, some technological know-how we have seen during COVID, how countries cooperated among each other. And this is really, unless the countries see it as an alarming challenge, no cooperation will not happen. I have a blend of pessimistic and optimistic, I would say. SARC at one point of time and even now has not been moving, but when COVID came, all the heads of nations and the countries joined hands together to create a SARC COVID fund, which really brought transformation. So there is a end of the tunnel, there is a light, but it requires some political goodwill, and that can only come when the political masses will realize that this is a very alarming situation where we don't need to talk about only SDG as SDG or acceleration, but we need to talk about an alarming situation where we need to rescue, and I won't say the SDG, but rescue the nations. Because also there is, working in UN, I have found many of the countries or many of the policymakers have thought that SDG is a UN thing. It's not a UN thing. It's the countries which have taken up those responsibilities. It was the countries who have fixed those targets, and then they struggled by meeting those goals and targets. And we heard about localization. There are success stories, but every citizen, including me, is responsible for a country to contribute towards its SDG. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ratna, for a very thoughtful and deep analysis and your value addition to today's discussion on the future of SDGs. We now move on to the next panelist, who is also connected online, Dr. Nicole Buchu, who is with Global Solutions Initiative at Berlin and Adjunct Senior Fellow at RIS. Dr. Buchu, my question to you is, what is the scope of multilateralism and multilateral institutions at the current juncture in adopting new pathways of international cooperation towards a development framework which we can implement beyond 2030? And in this context, what are the opportunities for multi-stakeholder initiatives in shaping the process? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and always a pleasure to join RIS, whether in person or online. I would like to answer your question by raising also our shared attention about the measurement of the crisis we are in. The more it goes, the more my impression is that we are in a situation that resembles a lot the COVID pandemic just 6 years ago, only that this time it's not a virus that comes from bats or whatever, it's a problem that comes from ourselves. That is us as agents of institutions in the world and us as citizens and so on and so on. The level of decaying of a number of existing multilateral arrangements, multilateral organizations and frameworks is appalling. And we cannot take that very lightly. Back in the last few weeks, I have myself organized with a number of partners a number of discussions about the future of SDGs, one in Delhi, and another one 2 days conclave at Nalanda University, which I shaped with and it was about the future of the Global Development Goals. I think we need to find ways that are not listed in any of the maps and charts that we are still using, referring to the way that the SDGs were formed in 2015 and so on. And we have to invent new ways for cooperation, for development purpose, to be reaffirmed. I'm not saying that everything is doomed and so on and so on, but I think we need to be very much aware of the multifold impacts of the changing rationale that is at play in a country like the US, that is at play with the transformation of the transatlantic link, which is at play with the changing role of Europe, which is at play also and at this moment with the new role or new convening and leadership role that a country like India should or could take in that very context. It is no longer enough or sufficient to say that there need to be this or there need to be that. The question is how to operate in a very, I would say, degraded context as compared as the one we have known in just the past decade or so of the SDGs. And I cannot thank RIS enough to set up a discussion like this today, because part of the answers, I would say the answers, would be probably very much multifold. I think when you have a focus on very localized issue, you will find some aspects and some ways to emphasize the need for development support. If the lens is about regional cooperation, and this was perfectly reminded by the speaker just before me, you will find other aspects of pursuing and evolving the discussion about a long-term development. And then if you frame it from a more global perspective, I think here the rationale is changing. And let me just briefly explain how this rationale is changing. I think, especially for India, which is poised to reach this Viksit Bharat objective of achieving high growth and changing status in a generation from now, right? In about 20 years from now, the challenge is double: is how to continue support and nurture growth, but also in ways that position India continuously more as a leader on the global stage. And we probably need to be a bit more creative than we are today when it comes to post-2030 discussions. We need to understand also what can we do with changing macroeconomic conditions. In the forum at Nalanda, it was questions a lot about the end of the Washington Consensus and then what would come next. If there is a Global South consensus, and this Global South consensus would be also applied to the so-called Global North, what it would look like and who would be the leaders, and how cooperation between India, Brazil, South Africa, to name this IPSA format, for example, or other formats of cooperation, could help pave the way for a new form of consensus to emerge. What would be the ingredients? What would be the role of, I would say, scientific cooperation, science to policy cooperation, academic cooperation, and what would be the role of think tanks? In a nutshell, can track 2 diplomacy or track 1.5 diplomacy still be activated to reach out to, I would say, new shared understanding of the factors of this multidimensional crisis we are in, and that is fabricated by humans, not by other species, and how we can still move forward with, let's say, maybe not sustainable development goals per se, but commonly agreed development goals. And the question is not how many, but how to agree upon the formation of common development goals and human flourishing that would go with this, and the macroeconomics that would go with this, and by mid-century, what would things look like, which does corresponds very much to also the horizon time frame that India has been setting up for itself, that is 2047 or 2050. Maybe if you allow me just into 2-3 more minutes, I would like to emphasize also that when you discuss all across the globe about the state of the SDGs now, one aspect that comes out repeatedly, so as a pattern, is that maybe it is too difficult or unrealistic for the whole world, to be framed to reach out a goal like you want to achieve it as a company, as a consultant. The world is not the world incorporated as a company. It is a world of different sorts of agents, and starting with people. So it's not really about how to achieve point A, B, C, D, E, or target 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but to be able to frame a horizon for shared progress, shared development, shared understanding of a number of systemic challenges and others. And apropos the way to frame such challenges, that would be my last point. I would like to emphasize the profound difference in the, I would say, thinking and reflections on post-2030, post-Agenda 2030, post-SDGs, and so on, now as compared with about 10 or 15 years ago. What happened is that in the past 10 or 15 years, a number of countries of the so-called Global South, they have become strong participants to global leadership, starting with India, right? And India itself still is largely an agricultural country, with more than half of the population being in a rural environment and working with agriculture. So in itself, and it was said a little bit in the first plenary, the way that agriculture and rural livelihoods will evolve in India in the next generation will probably be part of how to solve the development equation in the whole world. That is the first point. The second point, we need to be able to talk at some point about China, because the way China has evolved in the past 30 or 40 years has influenced greatly a number of parameters of global trade and other aspects of investments in the world. But can the experience of China in building systems of infrastructure be repeated? I'm not so sure, because if you look at resources that could be available, start from rare minerals to sand and other materials, there might not be enough of such material in the world to do that a second time. So solutions for development cannot be a duplication with a little bit of adaptation to what was achieved in the past 10, 20, 30 or 40 years. And I think we need to be very creative in terms of time frames, not limiting ourselves to 2030, maybe 2031 or 32, etc. We need to take the opportunity of, I would say, nurtured, solid, evidence-based discussions about the SDGs to really think forward. And for that, the role of think tanks cooperation is absolutely critical. The only thing is it is becoming more challenging. Because if you look just in the past few years, the way that somehow, even far from being perfect, collectively there were a number of responses post-COVID-19 pandemic in terms of macroeconomic coordination, role of MDBs, etc., was largely substantiated by discussions within the G20. This year, however, the G20 agenda is extremely narrow, and there is no evidence that in the coming years the G20 agenda will be as strong and as good and as substantial as it was, especially during the G20 India presidency, but also Indonesia, Brazil, and South Africa. So, to conclude, Madam Chair, on your question, I think there are multiple layers of focus that needs to be accommodated, that the questions of the future of the Global South is absolutely central, and that it should not be defined by countries from the Global North. But on the other hand, the way to form a new Global South consensus, if I may use this expression, should also be an occasion to be creative and to revive and to nurture active new ways and to continue on the good ways to support track 1.5 and track 2 diplomacy, so that new ideas and strong macroeconomic approaches can be crafted and prepared, especially if we hear the UN resident coordinator remarks at the beginning saying that things have not completely started yet, right, about the core of the negotiations in the UN regarding the future of the SDGs. This is the exact right moment for AIS to come up with others and say, okay, these could be directions to further looked at and emphasize. So these would be my few remarks at this moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your critical analysis of the global challenges, both of Global North and Global South. So we now move on to our next panelist, who is also connected online. We have Professor Gladys Lecchini from University of Rosario, Argentina. My question to you, Professor Gladys, is what is the role of South-South cooperation in reshaping the development narrative, and how can the Global South effectively navigate the sustainable transition?
Well, good. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. I think you are logged in from two devices. Please switch off the mic in the other one, or...
No, I'm logged in two devices, but it's only one.
So the audio from the other device is creating echo. So.
But there is only one device open. Let's see.
Okay. You can just lower the volume of the other device. Just lower the volume of the other device. Otherwise, please go ahead, because we are a little short of time. So please go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's okay now?
Yes, please
It's
go
okay
ahead.
now?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for the invitation, for RIS invitation, and thank you, Madam Chair and other colleagues for the opportunity to present my thoughts. I'm on the line of Nicolas' perceptions on the Global South, because to understand the future of the SDGs, we must first acknowledge that we are navigating a landscape defined by a polycrisis, a convergence of climate, geopolitical, and economic shocks that reinforce one another. While the 2030 Agenda was conceived in a moment of relative global optimism, today we see a resurgence of the international order's Hobbesian essence, where the pursuit of power and resources often overrides collective stability. As we witness this divergence into two parallel worlds, one of unprecedented military spending and another of systemic suffering, Thucydides' timeless observation from the Melian dialogue rings louder than ever. The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. Our task today is to challenge this fatalism. We must explore how the Global South, by moving from rule takers to rule makers, can redefine development, not as a fixed Western model, but as a resilient, co-created path toward systemic survival. When traditional multilateralism is ailing, we need more cooperation among Global South countries as a powerful driver of knowledge exchange. This is not just about diplomacy, it is about survival. While financing and technology are crucial, trust and data equality are becoming the critical ingredients for effective partnership. We cannot achieve sustainable development if the data and the measures that control our progress are based, or if the financial architecture remains extractive. Given these disruptions that we face, we must ask, how should actors in the Global South perceive development today? It has been proven that, as Nicola has exposed, that there is no one-size-fits-all model. So one opportunity could lie in leapfrogging. That means that countries in the Global South, and India is a beacon in this regard, have the unique opportunity to bypass traditional carbon-heavy and bureaucratic development pathways. For me, the shift beyond 2030 will be defined by the ability to innovate across diverse contexts, ensuring that development is not something designed in the global north and implemented elsewhere, but a localized sovereign process. The future of development is, of course, no longer measured slowly by GDP growth, but by resilience, inclusion, and sustainability. In this new paradigm, the Global South provides a laboratory for global solutions. Whether it is climate adaptation or new financial instruments like debt for nature swaps, the leadership of the Global South is no longer optional. It is decisive for the survival of the planet. The future of the SDGs will depend less on extending the current framework and more on our ability to rethink development in a systemic term. However, we must be intellectually honest. As we speak of leadership and on creation, we must ask ourselves, are we truly in a position to change this environment? Or is it to sit in the shadow long to escape? If the international system remains in a zero-sum game where resources and security are weaponized, the SDGs will remain a luxury of a world that no longer exists. So, beyond 2030, are we prepared to move from a model of aid and convergence to one of sovereign resilience and co-creation led by the Global South? Or will we continue to manage a global decline? The Global South must assert itself sufficiently to bring about the necessary changes rather than simply adapting. The Global South should be able to determine who decides how to adapt and under what circumstances. The answer will depend on our courage to innovate, not just in technology, but in power dynamics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent analysis of the roadmap for the Global South, including resilient and inclusive growth. So thank you so much for that. Now we come back to the conference room here. Our last but not the least panelist is physically present here. We have Professor Sanjeev Kumar, who is Dean, School of Liberal Arts, Bennett University in Uttar Pradesh. Question for you, Professor Sanjeev, is given the state of the global economy as well as the inherent vulnerabilities, what could be a plausible roadmap for a futuristic sustainable development paradigm which is more effective as well as universal?
Wonderful. That's a very nice question. Thank you, Dr. Shah, for inviting me and for our RAS for organizing this amazing roundtable, because I think we have just entered into a new world with generative AI, and we need to rethink about many of our assumptions about what kind of world is dawning on us. And when I was thinking about this short talk, I was surprised that my mind was connecting dots from Kautilya's Matsnyaya, Shiv Sutra, role of awe and vismay in the way we understand the world, and Elon Musk's insistence on thinking from first principle. So I think the kind of supply shock, so Ajay Agrawal, who is a professor of economics at University of Toronto, he has started this field of economics of AI. And he is saying that we have been hit by this unprecedented supply shock. He's calling that genius's supply shock. Because our cell phone has become a genie. It can answer any questions that you have. And if you have not spent that much time on ChatGPT, Cloud, and Gemini, then spend more time and you'll be shocked. You are carrying a PhD level intelligence in your pocket. So question is like, given that kind of unprecedented shock, how we are going to adapt? So we have to think about as future of SDGs in light of that shock. And I myself was surprised that my mind was connecting these very disconnected dots, because the kind of world in which we are living, it is a world characterized by Matsnyaya, might is right. It would have been impossible even 5 years back to think that a head of a state will be kidnapped, another will be shot dead, and yet we are living in that world. And one person who had understood that world better than, I will say, any other political thinker is Kautilya, Chanakya. And he has kind of given a causal chain. You want to create a good society? You have to do these steps and good society will get created. And I have not come across many people who are aware of that. So many of us know about Adam Smith's Invisible Hand, or Impartial Spectator, or John Rawls' The Veil of Ignorance. But we don't know what was the central contribution of Kautilya. And his insistence was on one virtue, or one trait. And what is that trait? Humility. So when you think about Kautilya or Chanakya, you don't think about vinamrata and humility as one of the key factor in creating a good society. And yet the formula that he has given, sukhasya moolam dharma, dharmasya moolam artha, arthasya moolam rajya, rajyasya moolam indriyajaya, indriyajasya moolam vinaya, vinayasya moolam vridhopaseva. So without intergenerational transfer of knowledge, you cannot be situated in the trait of humility. Without humility, you cannot control your senses. Without controlling your senses, you cannot create a good state. Without creating a good state, you cannot create resources. Without having resources, you cannot follow dharma. Dharma is your duties. And without following the duties, you cannot be happy. So the central emphasis on vinamrata was shocking to me. From 2014 to 16, I spent 2 years living with local people in Rwanda because I was interested in understanding this millennial village project that was manned by Jeffrey Sachs. And when I went to these villages, one word that kept, at that time I had no idea about Kautilya or Chanakya, one word that kept coming to my mind, that these guys were very arrogant. That they thought that they will come to these villages, spend $1 million or a few $1 million and can transform these villages. So lack of humility came as one of the factors why that project failed. And here, almost in 2022, I bumped into that slok from Chanakya. And here Chanakya is talking about you want to create good state, you have to be vinamra. But then there is no research on why did Chanakya talk about vinamrata. But you read Upanishad, Ved, everywhere they are talking about without vinamrata, you cannot get education, which is meaningful. So in India, they used to differentiate between Siksha and Vidya. So you don't go to colleges to just get Siksha. You go to colleges to get Vidya. Vidya is to understand who you are. So because of this genius supply shock that we have received, epistemological challenges have been taken care of. That how to know the world. It is contingent on the kind of questions that you are going to ask. And the answer that you will get probably is better than many PhD holders who can give answer to you. So the real challenge now lies in our ontological understanding. Ki hum hain kya? So what is the source of that ontological understanding? And that's where this 11th century text called Shiv Sutra comes very handy. Because that book is saying that without being in awe with life, without being deeply curious about life, you cannot actually be humble. So the kind of pathway is very, very clear. Going forward, we have to create education system in a way that it can engender that wonderment. Like right now, if I'll ask you while you are listening to me, what's the most amazing thing that's happening in this Srishti, in this world? Most amazing thing. That I'm just throwing air out of my body. And that has words and stories embedded in it. You start to pay attention to life. Life is shockingly beautiful. And it's like, you should be filled with awe and wonder when it comes to the kind of life that we are living. While we are sitting here right now, our galaxy is spinning at its galactic axis at 9 lakhs kilometers per hour. So it's like, we have no idea how it is doing that. I asked some cosmologists, they have no idea why the universe is spinning. They have some theories, but they cannot prove that there are not many universes. So living with that idea that we don't know so much is at the foundation. That humility is at the foundation of creating a better society. So what we need to do going forward, 2030 onward, till 2030 what we should do is we have to optimize our learning for our failure to meet these targets. That will be the best outcome possible if we can do that. And while we are doing that, we need to ensure that the higher education system, doing things at the primary school level are very difficult. Higher education system, you are meeting adults. And they're creating a system where they are excited about this life. is a very cheap intervention that one can do. And for that, we need access to microscope, access to telescope, access to good network. So I always give example of what's the difference between diamond and graphite. Both are made of carbon atoms, but diamond has so much more value than graphite. Why? Because of network. So higher education system, we need to repurpose higher education system to engender awe and wonderment in our students. And that will be the cheapest way to go about fulfilling any of the objective that we can create for ensuring flourishing of life on earth. That is a precondition. At the population level, we should be deeply in awe with life. So again, like I'm not revisionist, but you look at some of the. So in Rig Veda there is a shlok called Shraddham Pratar Hava Mahe Shraddham Madhyam Dinam Pari Shraddham Suryas Nimruchi Shraddhe Shraddha Payhana. You can be in a way that you are filled with reverence for life all the time. And once that happens, you will be curious. You will be respectful. You will not be seeking cooperation just among South and South. You will be seeking cooperation even with the North. And all the problem that I have shared that article with Dr. Saha, like this whole narrative that is making North at loggerhead with the South is guided by a wrong causal model. So I'm working on some of the papers. I can share that with you. But on that note, I will end this short talk. I feel like, as our ancestors used to insist that when it comes to complex challenges, you can take the sutra method of answering in a very, very precise manner. So that precise word is awe and humility. On that note, thank you.
Professor Sanjeev, let me say that your views resonate with what India has already adopted, which is the lifestyle for sustainable development.
Yeah.
And the most important component of lifestyle for sustainable development is the behavior of individuals, behavior of communities, the value system, the ethics system, the beliefs that people have, the consciousness of the people. Unless you are conscious of a challenge, you cannot solve it. The conscientiousness towards a challenge. And humility is one part of it. What is overarching is your spirituality. Spirituality not in terms of believing in a God, it's in executing a particular type of behavior. And all that is already inherent in the life approach that India has advocated as a new paradigm model for development. And this has been done earlier, as you have said, by philosophicals. And it is now continuing, and that is the essence of moving forward. To be conscious you have a problem, to be conscious you have to find a solution. To be conscious that you have to partner with others. To be conscious that humility is important if you want the partnership to last. So thank you. So that is a good ending to today's discussion.
Yeah, we have to get out of this blame game. Like I tell my students that I will put you on the sun, you can't even see the earth. Earth इतना छोटा सा है, उसके ऊपर बैठे हुए हम लोग. How
so
can
it
we
is
be
to do with the
judgmental?
behavior.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's what it comes down to. All other things fall into place. So do we have time for any questions?
I think we need to close because some of our participants have to take a flight.
Okay.
So we will close, but before we close, some final words. We thought that we would have Dr. Sheshadri Chari for the last session, but he could not make on time. But definitely we had shared the idea with him, so he is on board. And as all of you would agree that this was something that was very much required when we were started conceptualizing this idea, because the momentum on SDGs are quite weak at this point. People are confused as to how development trajectories and pathways need to be shaped, and we are also not very sure about who are our stakeholders at this point, who are our partners, whom do we talk to, how UN would respond, how multilateral institutions would respond. This year, the G20 is in a crisis. So that is some of the challenges that we have. So either you sit idle and do nothing, or you take some steps so that we organize some collective thinking and capacity building. So I think all of us have gained a lot of insights and ideas today through this discussion, which would help us going forward. Definitely in terms of the output, we will bring out a report out of this brainstorming. And let us wait and watch how institutions evolve over time, how multilateral institutions respond. But definitely I do feel that the research that has happened on the SDG implementation process, it is not only localization, but looking at the spillover effect, looking at how investments in R&D have happened, investments in other areas have happened. So we have a lot of evidence, and some statistical strengthening has also happened in several countries. Of course, we are constantly negotiating a very, very dynamic technological era where everything is getting reshaped, even monitoring and evaluation that we are talking about. So this is a very, very fluid times, but definitely these are also times when academics and scholars like us should convene more frequently in terms of exchanging ideas so that we have collective understanding of the issue. So with this, I definitely, on behalf of our Director General and leadership, we thank everyone who has joined. And we were also live on the YouTube. There could be participants online as well. I do appreciate our online speakers who have joined from different time zones. I realized for Gladys it is very early morning. She is in Panama right now. So thanks a lot everyone who joined this discussion today. And once again, I thank our chair, Ambassador Devri, and both the chairs for very effective steering of the discussion today. So we conclude here. We have a small token of appreciation for all of you. I request Chair to please. Yeah. Round of applause for all of us. Yes, yes.